All right, so thank you all again for coming and joining us this evening. My name is Matt Kleffenstein, and I work for the National Fellowships Office, and I'm here to share with you about the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, and hopefully let you know about this opportunity. And if you are still interested and eligible, connecting you with some resources to help you prepare your application for it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we can get started here. Can everybody see this? Great. All right, so hopefully, again, this is the workshop that everybody was intending to be at. All right, we just need to sign in. So a quick overview of what we're going to be covering in the next hour. We're going to start by providing an overview of what this particular opportunity is, what its purpose is, who's eligible to apply for it, the nuts and bolts, kind of the basics to help you understand what the opportunity is and whether it's a good fit for you at this point. We also have the privilege of being joined by one of our current graduate research fellows. Well, now she's finished defending her dissertation and is now a doctor and heading on to other great things. Annie Kleiss is here, and then a member of our faculty committee, Dr. Ralph Goza, is here as well to share his perspective too on this particular competition. So that would be great. And then I'll share a little bit more about how the National Fellowships Office is available to support you in the process of applying. Time permitting, we might do a little brainstorming. If not, I have a resource that I'll share with you to help get you started on thinking about what goes into an application you can then build from going forward. So that's where we're going. And please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. I will do my best to pay attention to that. But if not, certainly I'll make sure that it gets covered at the end as well. So let me start with one of the big pieces that I want to emphasize. This is especially true if you are a current undergraduate, say you'll be a rising senior, but also I think for early stage graduate students as well, is that if you're interested in a research-based STEM graduate degree and you're eligible, you really should apply for this opportunity. Again, if you are a current undergraduate who's thinking about a research-based STEM graduate degree, this is an opportunity that pairs really well with the process of applying for graduate school. And I would say for those of you who might already be in a graduate program, if you're still eligible to apply for this opportunity, it's a great opportunity to get some significant funding that can help you provide some freedom and flexibility in your graduate studies. And it's also a great opportunity to clarify some of your research goals and to practice articulating the main features of your journey as a scholar, as a scientist, as a researcher in training that will help you as you continue in your graduate program and as you pursue whatever you're looking to come for after that. So that's the one thing I want you to take away, is that if you're interested, if you're eligible, I would think you should seriously consider applying for this opportunity, because I do think it's a really good one for a lot of different situations. So let's start with what this award covers. The Graduate Research Fellowship is an award that can be used over 5 years that provides 3 years of support. And that includes a stipend and an educational allowance that covers tuition and fees that's given directly to your institution. And I should emphasize that the information that's here is based on the most recent cycle. So we should be getting more information about the new cycle from NSF sometime this summer, probably late June, early July. So it's possible that these amounts might be changed a little bit. They increased the stipend last cycle. It'd be great if they did that again. But we will let you know what new information is released at that time and if there are any changes. But this is a program that's been around for many decades, and the core features of it tend not to change from year to year. But I do just want to offer that caveat there. So it's a 5-year award where you have 3 years of support. And what that means is that you can take advantage of other funding that you might get from your department or other opportunities, maybe to teach or do something else, or other funding that you might be able to secure. And for 2 of those years, and then still have other 3 years of support that can be used. And so that gives you some flexibility in terms of when you would want to apply this particular funding. And you can do that by either designating that you are on tenure, receiving that funding, or you're on reserve. For those of you who are exploring different graduate programs right now, or will be maybe over the coming summer and applying in the fall, one of the great features of this particular award is that there's a lot of flexibility with it. You can take it to any accredited nonprofit U.S. institution, and you can use it to work with any advisor and your choice of a particular project, as long as it's in a research-based master's or PhD program in an eligible field. And so again, this is not an award that's specific to a particular institution. You could apply if you're, again, not currently already in a graduate program, to a range of different programs there. And then if you're offered this funding, you can take it with whichever one you choose to accept an offer of enrollment there. So that's another great feature of this particular opportunity. And there's no kind of obligation that comes with it either. You don't have to provide research deliverables to the National Science Foundation. There's no requirement that you work for the federal government, as the case with some federal awards there. So it really is just an opportunity that's about investing in the potential of science researchers and really trying to invest in the future of a wide variety of science disciplines. So that's what the award covers. So that alone, I think, is a great reason to consider that, because it's generous funding and it provides a lot of flexibility. The next thing that I want to clarify is eligibility here, because it is important, and we'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute here about when you're eligible to apply for this. But at the broadest level, there are a couple things worth noting. This is an opportunity where you do have to be a U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident. Unfortunately, that is a requirement that the U.S. Congress has placed on this particular program, which does make it a little less accessible than I wish it was, but that is something to know as well. And the emphasis for this particular opportunity is on the early stage of graduate study as well. So this is something where you need to apply within a certain window, and I'll clarify what that looks like in just a minute here. But that's understanding that purpose is important here. And as I mentioned before, this is about research-based programs here. So the master's program, the doctoral program that you might be considering applying to needs to be one that has a research focus to it here. So not every degree type that might fall under some of the disciplines that I'll mention here might potentially be eligible. But if you're doing a program where there's a thesis component, or you have that option to do it, and then certainly a PhD degree, those would be eligible there, because this is really about investing in the rising generation of promising young researchers. And so that's a particular focus there. But it's open to a wide range of fields, both more traditional STEM fields, but also some of the social sciences and some other disciplines that have a component that focuses on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, like STEM education, or even the history of science. So it's a very wide range of disciplines that are eligible to do this. And this is something that you would need to enroll as a full-time student in order to be able to take advantage of this if you were to be offered this particular funding here. NSF has a lengthy document every year, the solicitation that details all of these, and you can go into to greater depth about this. I'm happy to answer specific questions both later in this presentation or in a subsequent meeting or over email. If you have a question about your particular eligibility situation, I do get a lot of questions around this, because there are oftentimes some kind of gray areas about a particular program or about the stage that you might be at in that. But this, broadly speaking, is kind of the baseline eligibility for applying for this particular opportunity. So I mentioned that it needs to be a research-based program. I don't want to belabor this here, but I just want to draw attention to a couple of types of programs that are not eligible per the rules of this particular program. So professional degree programs are one category there, but also some joint programs too. So MD, PhD, or MD degrees are not eligible here. Public health and social work degrees, MPHs and MSWs, are not eligible as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about health funding and where and how you can approach doing that with this particular opportunity. But in general, Master's of Science degrees, PhD degrees, those are all going to be fine, provided that it's in one of the disciplines that we mentioned here as well. But if you're doing a different type of degree, it's possible it might be eligible if there is, say, a thesis track or a strong research component to it, but that is something that we should probably clarify, you know, in a one-on-one conversation later on. So broadly speaking, these are the fields of study that you are able to apply to. These are the major fields that NSF designates. And within all of these fields, there is a large number of subfields. So it gets much more specific than this as well. And if you look at the large solicitation document, I've got a copy of last year's here with me right now. If you look at a field, I'll just pick geosciences since Annie is here. And you can see that if you look in there, a large list of things that include atmospheric chemistry, biogeochemistry, biological oceanography, geobiology, geochemistry, geodynamics, geophysics, hydrology, and so on and so on and so on. So whatever your specialization might be, you can find what particular category you might fall into within that. So there's a lot of fields that are eligible for this. And again, I can refer you to that document to see what precisely you can do there. When it comes time to applying, you can think a little bit about which one might best represent the research that you're doing. I know sometimes research can fall into certain multiple categories. Sometimes you might be doing interdisciplinary work. There is a way to apply that as well. You would still need to designate one as kind of the primary fields. And this matters because of how the competition is reviewed. It's going to be reviewed by panels of experts within these particular disciplines. And so indicating the field is really designating who is going to ultimately be reviewing that kind of application. And so it's important in that respect there. But again, there's a very wide range of both these larger major fields that I've listed right here and the subspecializations that fall within it. So while there is a wide range of fields that are eligible to be applied for the NSF GRFP, there are some fields of study that are not covered by this. And largely this has to do with health-related work. And at this point, I want to take a moment and kind of emphasize what the larger purpose of the National Science Foundation's research programs are. So the NSF is really interested in basic science research. They want to know how your research is going to make a contribution to a particular field, to understanding fundamental processes, to creating new knowledge within a particular discipline here. This is as opposed to applied research. So they're not as interested in what use you might be doing with the research that you're doing in terms of, is it going to improve health outcomes? Or is it going to have some transformative impact in terms of its commercial potential in industry or something along those lines? And this is especially the case when it comes to health-related research. It is possible in some fields with a health focus to apply for the NSF GRFP, but you do have to think about how you're positioning that research. The larger reason for this is that the National Science Foundation is trying to not duplicate funding that could come from the National Institutes of Health. These are two large government programs with significant budgets, and they both want to focus on getting maximum impact with the money that they have there and not duplicating funding that another agency really has in terms of its larger mission to support there. So if your research has a health-related component, in some cases it just might not be eligible if it's really just focused on like community or public health, or if it's going to be clinical or patient-oriented. In other cases, you might be able to apply for the NSF GRFP, but you need to make sure that you're talking about it in terms of its basic science contribution, that you're not talking about how the larger hypotheses and the outcomes are primarily about treatment of particular health conditions or improving health outcomes there, but that you're talking more about understanding the chemistry of a particular substance that then might have an application in terms of drug development, but that's not kind of the larger focus there. So there are ways of doing this, and we have had fellows in the School of Medicine here and in, say, biomedical sciences, but it does mean that you have to tailor what you're talking about to this particular audience so that you're not stressing the health-related outcomes there, but are talking more about how it's helping us understand fundamental processes in biology or chemistry that might be applied in that way, but that you're not writing it in a way that suggests that you're focused primarily on that. So I do want to emphasize that point there. I think this is probably one of the most common issues that comes up. And so if you have questions about how you might do that, or whether or not your research or your field of interest is eligible, that's again something that we can talk about individually, because it really does depend. But again, broadly speaking, NSF is not looking at health outcomes in terms of its research. And so if you're in a clinical field specifically, likely it's not going to be eligible, but there are medical, biomedical disciplines that are eligible. And biomedical engineering, I should add, is something that is explicitly allowed under this. So there are exceptions and there are ways of talking about your research in a way that still meets the criteria for this opportunity. But it's important to be aware of what the larger purpose is so that you're speaking the language that the National Science Foundation wants to hear when you're putting together an application. I mentioned that there are certain time periods when you're eligible to apply for this particular opportunity. So I want to briefly go over these here. It can get a little complicated. There are some exceptions. I'm not going to try to touch on every possible situation that might arise here, but very broadly, if you are currently an undergraduate senior, or if you are an alum, maybe you're doing a post-bac right now or taking some time off, or you're thinking you might do that, you can keep applying for this as long as you're applying to eligible programs as many times as you want. So you could apply as a rising senior right now. If you decide to do a post-bac, you could apply again next year. If you decide to take 2 years off, you could apply each of those years. There's no limit at that particular stage. However, once you enroll in your first graduate program, you may then only apply one time. And I do want to emphasize first graduate program. So you might be a new PhD student right now, but if you've previously earned a master's degree, unfortunately, you would not be eligible because that would be considered your first graduate program. If you're in a joint bachelor's master's program, an accelerated program, you can apply, but you can only apply once, but it needs to be after you completed 3 years in that joint program. As a graduate student, you can apply once, but you can do it really at 2 different times. You could do it essentially in the fall of your first year or the fall of your second year, assuming that you started on the fall cycle. NSF language is that you cannot have completed more than a year in a program. In practice, this means basically 3 semesters if you're applying in the 3rd semester of your program. So the easiest way I can break this down, I think, is that if you started your program in the fall of 2022, last fall, you could have applied last fall. The deadlines are in October, or if you didn't do it then, you could apply this coming October. And that would still fulfill this requirement. Those would be the 2 options there. If you started it last summer, in the summer of 2022, you would have needed to apply last fall because fall of 2023, you will have already completed more than a year. You would be in your 4th semester, essentially, of that particular program. So I know this can get a little complicated. Again, if you have questions about your eligibility or your particular level or what counts as enrollment, because sometimes maybe you were doing a little bit of work over the summer, not in a degree-seeking capacity, there are ways to indicate that. But broadly speaking, that's when you're able to apply. So anyone who is a current undergraduate who will be graduating at the end of the next academic year is eligible to apply. Anyone who is currently unenrolled would be eligible there. And if you are a current first-year graduate student who has not applied for this program before, then you could apply in this coming year. Basically, is what the eligibility would be for this particular opportunity. So here's a quick overview of what this process is going to look like. So every year, the deadlines take place in October. Typically, it's the 3rd week of October. There will be a certain day of the week that certain major fields will be indicated. So everybody in the life sciences will have their deadlines on one day. Everybody in engineering will have theirs on another. All of that will be listed in the next solicitation when it comes out. This past year it was October 18th through 21st were the deadlines there. So I would expect somewhere around that time for this coming cycle as well. So some point in mid to late October, applications will be due. Reference letters are due usually a week after that last deadline as well, so sometime in the following week. And if you are a current undergraduate who will be applying to graduate school, or an unenrolled student or an alum who's not currently in a graduate program, that means that this is going to happen before a lot of the application deadlines for graduate schools. And so that means that preparing an application for the GRFP is going to get you thinking about the sort of things that you're going to be including in your grad school applications, which in a lot of cases will be due maybe a month or a little bit longer after that. And so you'll apply to grad schools sometime later that fall. Again, program deadlines vary, but many are later in November, early December, some cases early January. And then fellowship offers from NSF are announced sometime late March or very beginning of April typically. And then this is the time right now when selected scholars have the decision of accepting or declining the award and deciding if they are going to take that funding for the first year or if they're going to defer it to a later year, and then the fellowship year will begin in the subsequent fall. So this is what the application timeline looks like. Applying for this does not require you to go through any sort of process at the university or with NSF other than just submitting the application. I'll share some resources that we'll be doing over the summer and some support that's available to you, but that's not a requirement that you participate. So in order to apply for this, you just need to gather the necessary documents, have everything submitted in the online portal by the deadline. And so this is just letting you know how that review decision is being made, where it fits along with other things that you might be doing till when you would know about the results and when the funding would be available if you're selected for it. So that's broadly speaking what we're going to be looking at for the coming year. And now is a great time to be thinking about this. You can start brainstorming over the summer, start having some conversations with research mentors, talking with the fellowships office, connecting with some of the faculty and current fellowship peer mentors who can help you get thinking about this so that you'll be in great shape when October comes around and you're ready to submit your application. And what that application looks like is the following information here. And really the core of it is going to be these two statements. When it comes to funding for graduate fellowships and grants, this is actually a relatively modest amount of materials and a relatively limited amount of writing for it. There's certainly more complicated grants that you could apply for in many fields that some of you might do later on in your graduate studies. But for this, the core of what you're going to be writing, excuse me, is a 3-page personal statement that's really about your intellectual development, your journey in science, the experiences that have shaped you, the intellectual interest that you've developed, and the skills and opportunities that you've had to research and accomplishments you've had along the way that speak to those goals in preparation. And then a 2-page research statement where you propose a project that you could conceivably carry out in graduate school, discuss hypotheses, specific aims, methodology, to demonstrate your ability to generate a promising original research topic that you intend to pursue in graduate school, although it's not a requirement that you carry out that project there, because this is about, as I said before, investing in your potential as a researcher. So NSF wants to see the ability to think like a scientist, to come up with original ideas, that you have the curiosity and the preparation and the ability to be a productive researcher and do the sort of things that effective productive scientists do. So those are the two main written documents that you're going to be doing. In addition to that, you'll enter in a variety of pieces of information into the online application system. There's not a requirement where you have to upload a CV or a resume. The kind of information that would go in that would then be entered into the system in various fields about previous work experience, research experiences, awards and honors, publications, presentations, things like that. And then you will have to have transcripts and letters of recommendation. You can have up to 3 that will be read by reviewers there. There's a minimum of 2. We strongly recommend 3. And actually NSF will let you input 5 names into the system there in case you're worried that maybe somebody might not have a letter ready in time. And then you can designate which of the 3 that you would like to have the reviewers actually consider. You don't get to see those letters. And the people who are writing for you will not know if you selected them as one of your 3 or not, but that's just another option there. And we strongly recommend that you do get 3 letters of reference, because these are all opportunities to speak to your potential for being a successful graduate student and your promise as a researcher in development. So that's what you're going to be putting together when you submit everything in October. So quickly here, how are they going to make a decision? What is NSF considering when they're looking at these materials that you're writing here? NSF uses 2 evaluation criteria for this and for other grants as well. And these are intellectual merits and broader impacts. We're going to spend a little bit more time in a separate session later this summer really digging into what this looks like, but I do want to briefly talk about what this is, what both of these terms mean here, because they're important to thinking about how you would want to approach writing the documents that I just mentioned here. And so when it comes to intellectual merit, and when it comes to the other criteria that we'll talk about in a minute here, reviewers are looking for this both in the research you're proposing and in terms of your own abilities and accomplishments here. So think about the intellectual merits of both the project you're proposing, but also your own intellectual merits, your abilities, the accomplishments you have, the skills you've learned, the courses that you've taken, the research experiences that you've had, your ability to work effectively in a research environment or as part of a team, your ability to solve problems, propose new ideas, and take initiative, accomplishments that speak to that merit. Because intellectual merit is about the proposed activity and your ability to advance knowledge within your particular field. So how are you and how is your research going to create new knowledge across your particular field or for other fields within the sciences there? So your potential to advance knowledge and your research's potential to advance knowledge in a variety of different ways here. And these are just some examples of what this looks like. That's one key component, intellectual merit. Again, both of your research and of you as an individual. The next criteria are broader impacts. And this one is a little bit trickier. It's a little broader, as it suggests, in terms of what this can touch on here. But essentially, this is how does the proposed activity and how do you benefit society or advance what NSF calls desired societal outcomes? And they're somewhat stilted phrase there. And so what this looks like is, again, how do you and how does your research have that kind of broader impact? So both how might your research have an impact on society at large, or how do you as an individual, in terms of the way that you've been involved in things, in terms of how you approach the way you do research or volunteer or mentor or engagement, and that can look like a large number of things. These are some examples that NSF provides of things that might look like. This is not an exhaustive list. It could include other things there, but I think it's useful to take a look at that and think about how this represents this idea of making a larger impact. So it could be about who is being able to participate in the work of science. Who are you including in your research? This might mean groups that have typically been underrepresented in the sciences. This might mean, how are you sharing your research? How are you communicating science? Are you doing outreach activities? Are you involved in mentoring? Have you done educational programs? I know a lot of students are involved in student organizations or other organizations at the university right now that do things, programs for community groups, programs in schools, educational outreach with other organizations like the Riverbank Zoo and Gardens and things like that. Those are all examples of these kind of broader impact activities. It could be about things you've done to help increase public understanding of science. Have you written a blog? Have you been involved in a science club? Have you somehow, done something that's been covered by local media that draws attention to the research that you're doing, or hosting events for the community to talk about the impact that the research you might be doing or the lab that you're working in is having on a particular area here? That's another particular example there. It can also mean an impact for things like industry or other academic disciplines as well. Does it have the potential to have a commercial application? Does it have a potential to speak to issues in another discipline? That's a broader impact too. So maybe your field is chemistry, but it has an application to marine science. There are a lot of, again, different ways to think about what this can look like. You do not have to touch on all of these things, but it's just important to understand that this is another key feature to how this is going to be reviewed. And so I think it's an easy way to think about this is, what is your impact and what is your research's impact? What are you doing that makes a broader impact in terms of how you approach science, in terms of how you communicate it, and how will your research itself make an impact in terms of that knowledge that's being generated? Who does it have the ability to impact? So those are the two criteria: intellectual merit, broader impacts. And when it comes to your application, NSF's instructions for reviewers is to look for evidence of this in all parts of the application. So in principle, they're supposed to apply a standard of holistic review or comprehensive review. So while you will write specific sections in your documents that say intellectual merit and broader impacts, that's not the only place the reviewers are instructed to look for that. The caveat here is that, of course, how any one particular reviewer will interpret this is up to them, but they are instructed to look for this in all parts of the application and to weigh these two criteria equally. So intellectual merit is not supposed to be considered more important than broader impacts. And again, it's not that this is only to be shown in just the research statement, but the letters of recommendation, the transcripts that show the courses that you've taken, the accomplishments, awards that you're going to list in the other part of the application here. So that's how reviewers are supposed to be looking at that. And that fits with the larger purpose of what this opportunity is about. It's about, again, investing in promising young researchers who have the potential to make an impact in their field, both in terms of the research itself and in terms of the way that they're conducting it and communicating it with others there. So evidence of that can be found in a number of different areas. And so you can think about each of those components there and how it might be able to speak to that. And this is particularly important when you think about getting good letters of recommendation, because you'll want reviewers or recommenders rather, who can speak to your intellectual merit and broader impacts, who know the things that you've accomplished and the things that you've been involved in. And so that's a great thing to do as you're looking ahead to applying for that, is to have a conversation with the people that you would like to serve as recommenders there, and make sure that they know the things that you've done so that they can speak to that and be additional advocates for the type of impact that both your research and you as an individual have had and are going to have in the future, based on what you're proposing here. All right, so that's a quick overview of what this program covers, and some general eligibility and what the application materials look like. I'm going to pause for a moment here and turn things over to our guests to share a little bit about their perspectives. And so I will have Annie, Dr. Kleiss, start off as well, a current National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow, to share whatever insights you might have about this particular opportunity, how you've approached it, the benefits of it, or other pieces of wisdom that you think would be useful for someone considering this.
Yeah, first of all, being called Dr. Kleiss will never get old. That is my new favorite thing in the entire world. But yeah, I really resonated with what you started the presentation with, which was it's always a good idea to apply. I mostly applied to the GRF as practice writing grant proposals my first year of graduate school. I had a lot of support from my advisor to write like the entire document. I only had 3 weeks to work on it though. And so I think the biggest lesson that I have, it's a much more comprehensive document than I anticipated it being. I think especially coming from undergrad, I was like, oh, in total, this is about 5 pages. I can do that in a day. This is different. It's a very, very dense 5 pages where you were talking about the most excellent parts of what you do and what you see yourself as capable of doing. So starting to work on it over the summer, talking with different faculty that you've worked with throughout undergrad or that you're hoping to work with in graduate school to say, what do you see as my strengths? What do you see as things that I can really grow and work toward? And what are different ways that I can like pull these different components into the work that I'm doing? So I think starting graduate school for me, writing this application and saying, okay, what will the broader impacts of my work be? And making that a very deliberate plan for the rest of my graduate career, not even anticipating that I would receive the award, which was amazing and surprising. But I think this document, like the practice of applying for it, ends up being one of the most valuable experiences. I put in the chat at the beginning when Matt was talking, I finished my PhD last month and I still pull from that very original document because the writing just ends up being very strong. And you can use it for a million different things, including other grant proposals. So it's great practice. And the best case scenario is you get it and it funds you throughout graduate school, which gives you plenty of other opportunities. And having this on my CV as someone looking for a job has been a very great conversation starter. And just, I think it's opened a lot more doors for me than I ever anticipated it doing. And then it also helps you get additional NSF funding. So I think grants get grants. So the more experience you have getting these and applying for them, the more you get in the future. So I strongly encourage you all to do it and to start thinking about it as early on as possible. But if you're even qualified for it, just do it.
Great, thank you so much. We'll have a second here to ask some questions here, but I'll ask Dr. Ralph Grothe if he wants to share a little bit as well too from a current faculty member's perspective.
Still muted. Yeah, the question was me first, or first questions, but let me kind of hammer that in. I think it's kind of really the most important thing. If you are eligible and interested, and you really should be interested, you really kind of should try to go this route and to apply for it. There are only advantages for anyone who is doing it. And it's on all levels. It's kind of, if you get the money, if you get the award, you will always have more financial support than in any other way. Even if you would go to a school where you kind of would get more money from your research mentor, it's still is then for you to negotiate what you could get above it. I kind of cannot see it because it's already a very, very good base sum that you get, but financially it will never work against you. It will always be in your advantage. When you are already in a graduate program, it gives you also more freedom. Typically, you really kind of have, particularly in the first year, still chances kind of to tune the direction of your research. And when you kind of have your own support, then this is really kind of much more your choice, because you can really kind of can ask anyone that you want to do this research with him or her, and you have the financial support that you will bring with you. So that person will not need additional NSF or DOE or other grant funds kind of to support you, and you have that additional freedom. If you are applying for graduate schools, in both cases, if you are winning this NSF award, then since it is competitive, as Annie was kind of saying, it's really opening your doors. It's opening your doors applying to graduate schools and choosing in the graduate schools. And if you are in the graduate school, and if you have gone through the program, and if you are a PhD, it doesn't end. You kind of have this accomplishment in your CV, and it will really help you there too. Then, even if you don't get it, it's extremely important because it's a unique opportunity to learn. You get this huge support from the Honors College, and you have faculty members and you have faculty who will work with you on it. From my side, I kind of have to write definitely on a regular basis my own NSF grants. I have reviewed NSF grants, and I have reviewed NSF GRFP programs and candidates. So I kind of also know it a little bit from the other side. And now you kind of have the chance kind of to talk to people like me or other faculty members and other faculty who try to help you on your way. And that really kind of is a unique opportunity to learn. And it's not only if you kind of want to then stay in research, and you will have to write your grant proposals later on by yourself, and then there is no help anymore. You kind of just, you have to do it. You read kind of the criteria, and then you try to make the best out of it. Now you can get very, very helpful advice, kind of how to optimize that. And you learn from that. And even if you, as I've said, if you don't go into research and don't have to apply for your own grants in the near future afterwards, then it's still extremely important because it kind of crystallizes out in your brain what you really kind of want to do, what your abilities are, how you can sell yourself, how you can make yourself attractive. So therefore, for any job you might be interested later on, it will be a very good opportunity to train how to approach these things. And therefore, can just summarize again, if you are eligible, you should be interested, and you really should do it. It can only be beneficial for you.
Yeah.
Well, if that hasn't convinced you to apply at this point, I don't know what will, but are there any specific questions that that anyone in the audience here would like to ask our two expert guests?
I have like a weird question. It's not like weird, but it's very specific to me. So I am currently a senior here. I'm graduating like in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But I'm doing the accelerated master's program in biology. So I should have my master's by summer 2024 because I'm starting it officially May 8th. So that will like, for some reason, every time I read it and stuff, like I understand like the joint master's programs are, but are accelerated master's programs like eligible as well? Like, will I be eligible to apply? Because I want to have it for my PhD, which I'm planning on starting in like the fall of 2024.
Yes, I believe that that should be the case if the current program is a research-based one, with that, because it is possible to have the funding split kind of across degrees, and you can transfer it from one institution to another. So that is the case sometimes where someone will get the funding for a master's degree, and then use it, maybe a year of that funding there, finish that degree, apply to a different PhD program, and then take that funding with them. So that is something that is done there. I think assuming that this is a research-based, the accelerated program that you're doing here, then I think it should be eligible. I always want to put a little bit of an asterisk on that because I'm not the one who makes the call about these sort of things there, but it is possible to apply, in that first graduate program and then use the funding if you're offered it for an additional degree if you go on for a PhD.
My
Okay,
understanding, I can only underline that is definitely true for grants that I'm applying for. So if I would move to a different research institution or university, I could bring my grants with me. Therefore, the NSF philosophy is definitely that you can transfer, but Matt is definitely much more knowledgeable about how it is with the GRFP.
Thank you both. Thank you guys. And yeah, I am planning on like applying for it in like by this October deadline. But applying for it to fund my PhD because I should be starting my PhD on that September 1st, 2024. So I shouldn't even have to transfer it, is what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I have a friend who's done something similar to that and who's finishing their PhD now. And I'm trying to like remember how their trajectory started because they were also in bio at USC. So I'm like running through my head trying to remember how they set it up. But I'm like applause to all of you for already thinking about this because again, like I did not prior plan for this. And I think that had I had the opportunity to do that and the forethought to do that, I would have had a much stronger application. I've since gone back and read that proposal, and I suggest that you never go back and read your proposals because you find so many typos and errors. But I think starting to think about this now when you're planning ahead into the future, I think that's really a great way to do it and to like think about very intentionally designing projects like a PhD project. And I think one thing to really undersell here when you're going into grad programs, having this external funding, especially the GRF, it moves with you wherever you go. So if for any reason you decide to up and move, like maybe a program isn't the right fit for you, you decide that you want to be further from home, you want to be closer to home, like for any reason, if you decide to move around, this funding comes with you, which means that you really have the autonomy and the power to do that as you see fit. And not to tell you to plan on moving, but I think having that in your back pocket. So if things change, like, I don't know, if a global pandemic starts and you just need to like change how you're living your life, being able to move around and have the power over your funds gives you a lot more freedom in the different things that you do. This also gives you guaranteed summer funding. The GRF gives you funds year round. And as you apply to graduate schools, you'll see that that's not always the case. Fortunately, my department at USC guarantees summer funding, but that's not everywhere that you go. I've seen other schools that don't guarantee it, and they'll give you 2 weeks notice if you're going to have summer funding. So this means that you get to do your job the whole year, and then you get to really take finances off of your like radar of stress, and instead you can focus more on your research, and it gives you a lot more mental space to think about like the things that should be your priority, if that makes sense.
Any other questions here before I wrap things up with a little bit of an overview of what our office is able to provide in additional support? All right, well, I should also add that I'll be following up with everyone who's attended here with a copy of the slides tonight and some additional information on how you can get in touch with others, including our guests who can help provide support too. So we're always happy to continue the conversation if you think of something later on, or in a month or 2 months or whatever that might be. But I'll go ahead and pull up the rest of what I have to share here, which again are some next steps for what you can do if you've decided that you're interested in this, that you're eligible for it, that you want to learn a little bit more. This link will be available in the follow-up email that I'll be sending you tomorrow. But you can fill out a little form for my office called Intent to Apply. This just lets us know that you are interested in applying for this so that we can have you on our radar. We can add you to our list and let you know about upcoming opportunities so we can notify you when the solicitation is released by NSF and draw your attention to any changes or important details that might come along with that. So that's just a simple way to make sure that we can stay in touch with you going forward. And then it's going to be important to be in contact with the people who are going to help shape your research and who are going to write letters of recommendation for you here. So talking with an advisor, talking with someone whose lab you're currently in, or if you're again going to be applying to other graduate programs, reaching out to potential graduate mentors at the institutions you're looking at to start that conversation to see if they might be interested in you as a graduate student. And in some cases, they might be interested in working with you on your GRF application. That's not uncommon, where somebody might say, yeah, you'd be a great fit in my lab. Let's work together on crafting your research statement there. And so the summer is a great time to start those conversations, to again, let the people know who are going to be writing recommendations for you, what you're planning on doing, so that you can have that conversation and they can understand what you've been up to and write strong letters there. And also for you to start making some of those connections as you're exploring some of the possible programs you're thinking about applying to. Again, if you are a current undergraduate or if you're a graduate student in a master's program who might be looking to apply to different PhD programs there. I'd also encourage you to spend a little bit of time on the GRFP website. Again, information there will reflect the most recent cycle, but there's not typically not major changes there. And they have some great resources in terms of some FAQs about eligibility situations. They have a little online quiz that you can take to broadly determine if you're eligible to apply for it. Some helpful recorded sessions from previous years about different aspects of the application. So some great resources there. And then connecting with the National Fellowships Office as another resource as well. And there are a number of things that we can help provide you with over the coming months here. Our office for both the National Science Foundation Fellowship here and for any other external graduate or undergraduate award is available to work with you. I'm one of a part of a larger team of fellowship advisors who are here to support you. My colleague Chastity Graham was not able to be here this evening, but she is our undergraduate STEM advisor who also works with me on this particular competition. I'll have her contact information to share with you as well. We're all available to help support you and to have a one-on-one meeting to provide you with individual feedback, to read over a draft of that application that you're working on, to have a conversation, to help you brainstorm ideas and experiences, to help you understand how the application works or some of the finer points of the program. So please take advantage of that. I'll have some information about how you can schedule meetings with us in a little bit later. We've got great fellowship peer mentors like Annie, who have won these awards and are excited to share about what that process was like. So please take advantage of their expertise as well. Again, I'll be providing you with some contact information to do that. We have faculty members too, as we've already heard from tonight, but there are others part of our larger faculty committee. We're still finalizing that for next year, but I'll be preparing a document that I can share with interested students by the end of this month, hopefully, that will give you some additional contacts on campus for our expert faculty in a variety of fields who are interested in this program and are happy to support and mentor students in that process as well. My office is also going to be creating some online resources in Microsoft Teams that will help you, see some previous successful applications from this institution and provide you with documents from NSF and other things to kind of centralize all that in one place. And then we'll also have some programming over the summer that's meant to help you prepare for things as well. And I just want to have a brief overview of what that looks like. And so summer, I know, can be busy. I know many of you might be thinking, already have internships lined up or research experiences and things there. And this is not something that you're required to do, but we do think it can be helpful to participate in a few things, taking just a couple of hours over the summer to really just help you stay on track, to make sure that you're still thinking about it, so that we don't just go from having attended this workshop tonight, feeling excited about it, to then suddenly, it's the end of September and now you're thinking about it again for the first time. So again, this is an optional way to help you stay on track, to help you check in at a couple points over the summer. And it's meant to be flexible to work with your schedules, because I know that there are a lot of things that are going on in the coming months for many of you. But as a next step, we would encourage you to reach out to our office and meet with the fellowship advisor, kind of talk about your particular situation, the programs you're interested in, the stage you're at right now, the research that you're doing. And you can do that for your current undergraduate through Navigate. You can look for myself, Matt Kloppenstein, or Chastity Graham in particular to have a meeting there. For current graduate students, you can schedule through Calendly and meet with me. We're happy to meet with you virtually or in person, as your schedule permits. And of course, you can send us an email as well. I've got our address here in a minute. So that's a good first step, just to kind of touch base and give us a sense of what you are thinking about, so that we can connect you with other resources on campus, and make sure that you are plugged in to everything that we're able to provide. As I mentioned before, talking with an expert in your field, a current faculty member, whether here or at an institution you're planning on applying to, or a member of our committee, is another great thing to do to get that discipline-specific perspective that's so important here. I'm happy to help you understand how to write a fellowship as a particular form of academic writing, about how, what makes a compelling personal statement, how to structure a research statement there. But I can't tell you if your research question is significant or if your methodology is appropriate. And I'm not going to try to do that. But there are great people that can help you with that, and encourage you to make some connections in that respect as well, so that other people can learn about your research experiences and give you some of that discipline-specific guidance that's going to be really crucial here. And then we'll be doing some interactive summer workshops that are meant to break down this application, make it as understandable as possible. We're going to be doing a short session on understanding the review criteria. I provided a brief overview of that this evening, but again, digging into greater detail about what that looks like, some examples of what might count as evidence for that, pulling from some comments from reviewers, to help you have a good sense of what reviewers are going to be looking for. And then for each of the two statements, the research statement and the personal statement, we'll do a deep dive on that. Talk about what makes for a good statement in each case, look at some examples, and really work through why the way a person has structured a particular portion of that statement is effective, some common pitfalls to avoid, some problems that we tend to see with students in early stages, and how to overcome that, and really put your best foot forward with all of that. And we've not yet finalized the dates for that, but we're looking at sometime second half of June into July. Last summer, we did this for the first time. We offered these sessions virtually at 2 different times each, to try to make it as flexible and accessible as possible, because I know people are, potentially all over the country doing all sorts of other things with their work there. But these are some ways to help you stay on track in the summer, and you can just drop in for an hour, get a little bit of information, and hopefully get you thinking about the sort of things that you can be including in your own statements going forward. All right, we're almost at our time here, and so we're not going to take time to really dive into this right now, but I am going to go ahead and put into the chat a document. I'll send this in the follow-up as well. It's a little worksheet that can help you do some brainstorming. And really, it's just some questions to get you thinking about each portion of the application. Things about who can write a recommendation for me and why. What are the research experiences that I've had? What was that experience? What was my specific role? What kind of outcomes came out of that? Did I present a poster about it, or give a talk on it? Have I been able to contribute to a publication? How am I involved, in my university or my lab, those broader impact sort of things. So these are just some things to help you start generating some of those examples that are really going to be the heart of a strong application. because your application is something that really needs to tell a story about your development as a scientist and how the research you do and the way you do it contributes to your field and contributes to the larger world. And if I can, provide just one piece of advice on how to do this, is that you really need to do this with specific substantive examples. This is really about showing rather than telling, not just saying, I'm committed to mentoring people. It's about saying, I'm involved in this particular organization where I do X, Y, and Z, and we've had the opportunity to work in this particular way. So it takes some time to think about that, to remember all the things that you've done, to remember every research experience you had and what that particular contribution was in there. And at this point, it's really just about getting those ideas down. There will come a time later when you might have to make a decision and say, do I include this detail? Do I lead with this example or that one? And maybe I leave this out. That's not that point right now. Right now, just need to get those things out of your head so that you're not going to forget them later on. So take advantage of this worksheet or do a little brainstorming on a sheet of paper or an open word processing document and start reflecting on some of those things that you've done, those specific accomplishments that you've had, the skills that you've learned, the research experiences that you've had, because that's really going to be the basis, the real substance that will make your case and provide that evidence of your potential by showing that you have already done things that give reviewers confidence that you will continue to do them going forward. And so that's the first step. And I encourage you to take a little bit of time, whether it's this evening or this weekend or in a couple of weeks, and reflect on some of those things there. That can be a great first start to a conversation. If you want to come in and talk with a fellowships advisor, we can go through those examples and kind of take things from there. So I'd encourage you to do a little bit of brainstorming. That's really going to help you get things started over the summer so that when it does come time later on, when you're actually going to start writing drafts together, you will be in a strong position, having already done some serious reflection about the things that you're ultimately going to be writing about. All right, I know we've had some time for questions before here. I'll just briefly have this information about my contact information here. I'm going to drop a line for a quick little feedback survey if you want to let us know about the session, things that you thought were effective, things you would have liked to have heard instead. That's just to help us make sure that we're providing the most useful information for you. But I will go ahead and pause the screen share here, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we can do some questions.